You are now watching the Conversations on Sinology podcast, where China's past and present meet global curiosity. Join us as we explore Chinese language, literature, history, culture, economy, and ideas that have shaped one of the world's oldest traditions and play a powerful role in shaping today's world. Presented by the Montenegrin Sinology Development Council.
Welcome to Conversations on Sinology, a podcast presented by Montenegrin Sinology Development Council. Join us for enlightening conversations on Chinese language, culture, history, and contemporary research with leading scholars and practitioners from around the world. I'm your host, Jelena Stjepčević, sinologist, researcher, and founder of the Council. Today, we have a special pleasure to host Goran Đurđević from Croatia. Goran Đurđević is a comparative, classical, and Asian archaeologist, environmental and digital anthropologist, and global ancient historian originally from Croatia. Goran, welcome to Conversations of Sinology. Goran, how are you today, and how is it in wonderful Croatia?
Yeah, I'm very well today, thank you. It is obviously quite hot, but it's typical summertime, and if you see that I'm sweating, it's not because of your questions, it's because it's hot here, so don't worry.
Well, it is a very similar situation in Montenegro. I'm very glad that I have this opportunity to discuss one particularly and always interesting topic, which is the topic of Silk Road. And we are going to discuss that topic from various aspects today. So, Goran, let's start with the very term, with linguistics, with the very term Silk Road. It was coined by Richthofen in the 19th century, although ancient sources like Marinus and Ptolemy had already described Eastern and Western trade routes in antique times. From your perspective as a historian and archaeologist, how much does Richthofen's original definition differ from today's broader understanding of the Silk Road as a network of land and sea routes?
Yes, so thank you for this type of question. When we speak about the Silk Roads, it's quite dichotomy, right? Should we use the Silk Road in singular or in plural? Richthofen used both. So he used singular and plural, but very important is, as you mentioned, so he started his journey, academic journey, we can say, to Central Asia as a geographer and geologist. And he worked for mining companies, mostly in US. So, and he was sent to research different kinds of natural resources. This was quite a typical story where you have a variety of those explorers who are sometimes scholars, sometimes they are sent by economic interest, colonial interest, imperial interest, sometimes they are spies or even just thieves. So there are a variety of the stories in the 19th century. And Richthofen became kind of expert for China, which he get this kind of we can say glory of Chinese expert, although his knowledge about China and particular Chinese language was quite low, which was, for example, different than Paul Pelliot, the French explorer, who has very high knowledge of Chinese language and culture. And this is important because some noticed by von Richthofen has been influenced by those imperialist and colonial discourse, which is quite often. So when he started to coin the term, actually the term was not become popular immediately. And as you know, there's a lot of other people who wrote about this travel, etc. And particularly Albert Hermann was the guy who in the early 20th century more popularized this term Seidenstraße, Silk Roads, right? And why is this? My opinion is it's more related to exotics instead of deep knowledge of ancient sources, because we always need to understand this kind of geography as imagined geography or imperial geography from perspective of German Empire or British Empire or some other French Empire, etc. And their interest in mostly Central Asia and then, of course, in China.
But Silk clearly played a central role in naming and even imagining these routes, but it was just one of many traded goods. Why do you think silk became the defining symbol of this transcontinental network? And what cultural or symbolic weight did silk carry, especially from the Western point of view?
Yeah, so the first of all, it is, of course, as you mentioned, not just silk. So there is a variety of trade goods coming from one side to another side. And of course, as maybe if I didn't make it so clearly on the previous question, it's definitely not a one road. It is variety of land and sea routes, which means that there is no highway directly at that time. Instead, it is different types of vehicles, different types of transformation, different types of sending goods, which means by, you buy from your neighboring trader, then you add something and you resell it, etc., etc. So, but for the second part of your question about the silk, the silk was understood as something exotic, something related to China. Even people who produce silk are called seres or serica, and you know that there are still kind of journals dedicated or book series to this, and they are more or less related to East Asia and to China. So I think this is also very important in imagination. But if we go deeper into past, not just to stay for 19th century imperial colonial discourse, if we go to the Roman Empire, since the first century, they also mention this silk as a part of decreasing economy of the Roman Empire. It's very interesting. So you have the Pliny the Younger, for example, or Tacitus or Emperor Tiberius. They all discuss silk from the various perspectives, mostly as something which is not so relevant for, we can say, Roman people, and on another hand, something that cost a lot of income, a lot of money, and particularly because the silk is more related to the females. So when males should wear the silk, it should decrease their gender identity in the early Roman Empire. So it was also important. But if we move back to the 19th century, so we have the long road of this silk as something oriental, something Eastern, something exotic, something even luxury. So, and this is the perception of the Central Asia and East Asia as something which is far away, exotic, and luxury, but also it could fulfill us with some goods.
Thank you, Goran. That was really, really insightful. And when we're talking about the very Silk Road, the ancient Silk Road, it is and its origin, where it had originated. It is believed that it originated at Kaiyuan Gate, situated on the western edge of Tang Dynasty city wall. Although it rose to prominence during the Tang era, to which we will get back later. However, the Silk Road was first established in the Han Dynasty, when Zhang Qian journeyed westward in 119 BCE. His route began in Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, continuing through Gansu province and Xinjiang and extending into Central and Western Asia. It developed over time to become a vital trade corridor linking China with the Mediterranean world. And there were different kinds of missions on the Silk Road, the first being of diplomatic nature.
Yes, of course, because the story seen from Chinese perspective was not trade influence to Central Asia or sending the goods. As you already know, the Han Empire or Han Dynasty, depends how you will call it and say, have been in the long time combats and wars with the Xiongnu people, sometimes identified with the Huns or Hans, depends how you will read this in the English transcription. So these traditionally called nomadic people or nomadic empire, it depends how you will also consider this, have been this kind of rivalry with the Han Dynasty. And Han Dynasty very military smartly understood that the only way that they can beat them and they can win over the Xiongnu people is to find some allies who will actually attack the Xiongnu people from the west, right? Who will attack, we can say, from Central Asia or from the back, if we can understand from the military and Chinese perspective. And this was the idea first to go through there to find kind of military and political allies for the war against this. But also beyond this, as you know, it is not a journey to the West, like in a way that you will just bring one person and he will be sole traveler. It is the group of experts, including geographers, politicians, including military experts, and of course, traders, merchants who go there. And this opened Han Dynasty more to even thought or to bring their services to the Central Asia. And one very, very important part is this, what we call it, war for heavenly horses, as you maybe know, during the Emperor Udi. So Emperor Udi is the most important emperor from the Han Dynasty, obviously one of the longest in Chinese history. And he has very interesting ideological perspective, which was combination of his charismatic leadership, but also spiritual parts. And he noticed that actually there are issue with the horses, in the combats and battles between Chinese and Xiongnu people. And he found out that there are in the Central Asia, in contemporary Uzbekistan, in Ferghana valleys, that there are some horses, they are blood sweater, so they have blood when they're sweating. And Emperor Udi understood this as a heavenly horses. So he prepared a large army of the different types of the soldiers and sent them to bring the horses. The army has a lot of troubles to bring horses back, but they catch some of these horses after they won the battle, although they have a lot of losses during the battle. So they catch some of these horses, they get another horses, and they bring some special type of horse food, kind of wheat or something, so they can better grow up and raise the horses. Later, it was quite sure that why those special horses who have this spiritual power because they sweat their blood, unfortunately they suffer a lot because they have some parasites and insects on themselves. This is why they have this blood. But from Han perspective, it is amazing story because it shows us importance of the horses, importance of Central Asia, and furthermore bringing we can say the Silk Roads, or Silk Roads if you want to say like this, as kind of transcontinental network started from the East Asia.
Yeah, absolutely very interesting point of view and explanation, and I thank you for that. But now we were speaking about Han Dynasty and Han Wudi, and I always like to tackle the period of Tang Dynasty, especially Tang Dynasty Chang and today's Xi'an, known during the Tang Dynasty as the Golden Market. Tang West Market has been reconstructed today on the original site of the historic Chang'an West Market in today's Xi'an, which is often called the most Chinese city, one of the places of birth, definitely, of Chinese civilization. This place spans 1.38 million square meters, and the market extends from east to west and features 8 main sections, including Silk Road Street, the Tang West Market Museum, Antique Town, and the International Exhibition Center. It stands today as one of Western China's most distinctive tourist destinations, naturally, and the prime location to explore and indeed engage with traditional Chinese culture. During the golden era of Chang'an's development, during the Tang Dynasty, can we freely say that the fact that it was the starting point or the end point from our point of view, if you look at it, from the Chinese viewpoint, would you say that the fact that it was the starting point of the Silk Road contributed to such thriving and reputation of the city?
Absolutely, because yes, you are completely right. It is starting or end or even central point if we can understand this, because we should not forget that Silk Road is going more to the east as well, to Korea and Japan, to Southeast Asia, where it's transferred to be more maritime, Silk Road, etc. But yes, and as we know from different types of historical sources, during the early medieval period, as we will call it, as you know, the Chinese are not using the terms medieval, early modern, etc., like we are for dividing the historical periods. They use by dynasties. But during the Tang Dynasty, the Tang has even more interest for Central Asia, and they really built, as Mark Lewis will call it, cosmopolitan empire, because you have variety of the groups during the Tang dynasty, and particularly from the historical and archaeological sources, we can see very, very interesting artifacts. Some of them are even do not recognize yet, such as golden peaches from Samarkand, very important topic and something that we already know, at least from some historical source. Of course, so we can imagine that in early medieval time, so just to make this situation clear, so it is time when the Slavic people come to the Balkan period as a group of maybe hunters or warriors at the edge of the Silk Road in East Asia. We have a city that have a glorious architecture. They have exotic animals. They have exotic artifacts and plants and brilliant art and culture, and of course economy. So I think it is really amazing to understand this, and definitely the Tang dynasty has more contribution to the development of Silk Road and more interest in Central Asia, or we can call it Inner Asia, depends from which perspective.
Yes, it's absolutely amazing, and you have mentioned the maritime Silk Road, which we absolutely must mention in this episode. Many areas across South and Southeast Asia played an active role in and were linked through the maritime Silk Roads at different times throughout history. Notably, in the early 1st century CE, international trade expanded significantly, fueled by the high demand of luxury items in both ancient Rome and China. Although caravans moved goods at a slower pace along the overland Silk Road routes connecting the India, the subcontinent, and China, maritime transport offered a faster alternative. Ships sailed swiftly from ports in the Indian subcontinent towards Southeast Asia and beyond. This highlights the significance of major Chinese ports, which served as key trade centers along the maritime Silk Road. Correct?
Correct. Yes. So it is very interesting to understand this from Chinese perspective, because it is actually, as one classic says, the classics of mountains and seas, as you know. And indeed, when you understand ancient China, you can see it is a combination of different type of land, particularly related to the Chang'an, Xi'an, or Luoyang, or this what we call today Western regions, and also this sea and the maritime started from today major ports such as Ningbo or Fuzhou or Guangzhou or Quanzhou, etc. Some of them have a long history for thousands of the years in the past. And definitely this maritime Silk Road started, of course, between the connection to Southeast Asia, but later expanded to connection to the South Asia and India, to Arabic Peninsula, and of course to the Mediterranean, because we have very clear evidences, such as religion evidences, particularly in the medieval time. You have the Muslim quarters, the Jewish quarters in those Chinese cities, that proves that there are the regular number of the residents or traders, merchants, sailors who will come and stay there for a longer time. So I believe that the maritime Silk Road has the similar, I will not say the same because it's very hard to quantify the role, but at least the similar role as the land routes.
Okay, thank you, Goran. But let's stay just a little bit more on this topic of maritime Silk Road. This sea-based trade route grew especially significant after the 7th century, as maritime commerce began to surpass overland routes in importance. This shift was largely due to the ability to transport larger cargo by the sea and the reduced risk of robbery and attacks compared to land-based travel. The ancient maritime Silk Road, serving as a vital continuation of the overland Silk Road, enabled the exchange of valuable goods such as silk, spices, as you have already mentioned, glass and porcelain. But there was something beyond trade. Was there something beyond trade? What can you say about that?
Yes, I think we as people who live in 21st century, particularly who are scholars, we should not understand history as a static. So it is always the dynamic issue. So just to make clear for the audience, I know you're in Montenegro, I'm in Croatia. So if I go by car from Zagreb to Kotor, it is not just that I am going. It is that it is going what we call world more than humans. Maybe some animal will be in my car, or some plant, or I will spread some insects, or I will spread some disease, or I will receive some of this. It's possible that I will bring some artifacts, but also it's possible that I can share some technology, that I can maybe spread some of my views, religion, philosophical views, or I can spread some of ideas, or I can learn both from this. And I think this is very, very important to understand. So if I use this very simple example from me and you, if I put it in this waste network, particularly maritime Silk Road, where you have, we can say, strong religious connection from the Mediterranean, which is more or less Christian based, particularly in the late antiquity and medieval time, through Arabic Muslim-based peninsula and this part of Persian world, to Hindu and Buddhist-oriented South Asia, Southeast Asia, through the different types of local folk beliefs that are all around this part. And then we can see by cemeteries, by tombs, how many of those spreading of religions are going. Furthermore, we can see by art how spread of Christianity or spread of Buddhism influence the different representations, for example. And furthermore, very important, we can see different technologies that are going and that are spread all around, because one of the key elements for spreading technology is imitation, is copying of the artifacts. Because it's not that all the artifacts that we found that they already came from the Roman Empire or from Han Empire. Sometimes there are copies somewhere, particularly coins or jewelry or something else, which means that the local producers learn the way how to imitate, how to make the artifacts similar enough to something that they know is fashionable, that they can earn money. So I think this is very, very important to understand this diversity of the Silk Road. And it is not just a trade by one person or trade by a group of sailors or merchants. It is actually dynamical exchange between what we call Afro-Eurasia. So both from east, west, north, south, and different directions. And I think this is something that we need to have in mind, particularly because these days we have direct evidences of the artifacts that are spread around, like previously in the British Museum, we have this exhibition by some of these artifacts that are definitely proved, like one small Buddha sculpture has been produced somewhere in South Asia, and it has been found in one island in Sweden. And it is the difference between producing time and actually time as a tomb artifact was 200 years. So it's very interesting. What is the journey of this one small artifact that goes around actually Eurasia? And this shows us the importance of understanding mutually. And I think this should be the key of what we can call Silk Road studies today, to understand that there is no more important political entity or less important, and there is no more influence to another. Instead, it is mutual, really mutual understanding, mutual influences, mutual ways of seeing the world from their eyes, not from our eyes.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Thank you, Goran, for that. And I've saved the topic of symbolics related to Silk Roads for you for the last question. So we have unfortunately come to the end of this interview, but I hope it will not be the last one, that we will have more interesting topics to discuss in future podcasts, but episodes actually. But how do you interpret the symbolic legacy of the Silk Road today? Actually, do you think there's a risk of oversimplifying what was actually a very complex and multi-layered history?
Unfortunately, there's always this type of risk. We like to oversimplify everything that we can, and it is always the process of different layers. The first is, we can say, state layer. What does different state want? State as a country, as modern contemporary countries and how they could understand the Silk Road from their own perspective. Of course, today we have what we call New Silk Road, and probably some of persons who are experts in this could discuss with you these topics as this what we call Belt and Road project. On another way, you have this, for example, based by UN and UNESCO, the Silk Roads as a cultural heritage, huge product and the program of UNESCO, where it's mostly founded by Germany, by some Arabic countries, by Central Asian countries. But on the third way, you also have, we can say, perception of the Silk Road from Central Asia, which is quite different than perception maybe in Europe or in Mediterranean world. So this is, we can say the first is this state level. The second level is what we call academic level, what we can see from the perspective who are scholars, how they will perceive, and should it really be called Silk Road or maybe Glass Road or some other way of the road, Spices Road, etc., and how to put it in the context of different types of those transcontinental networks, because we have a variety of them in Europe, in Eurasia, even in the world since 15th, 16th century. So this is academic way by using different methods and discourses and deconstructions. And third level is some kind of personal view, because now we have more and more tourists, travelers, people who even go across these continents. It's not so expensive, it's not so inconvenient that you drive a car or motorcycle from Montenegro and go to Mongolia or go to China or Vietnam, and or go by boat from one side to another. So people are using these opportunities, and I think this is very, very important to understand this perception as well, where we can see from a global to local, from macro to micro perspective, right? And I think that this is important to always have in mind how Silk Roads have been influenced different parts of the world, and how this dynamic connection is still good an inspiration for maybe research, for exchange, and for understanding. I'm not saying when I say research something that should be superstructured. It could be art research, it could be movies, etc.
Yeah, absolutely good, and I'm very thankful for this enlightening conversation. And Silk Road definitely is a very complex and always interesting topic. But I think that we during this short interview, because absolutely this topic requires a lot of time, it could be discussed from many aspects, and I think we managed to tackle it from and help people perceive it. Hopefully, for many different and interesting angles and points of view. As I already said before, I hope that this will not be our last episode, and that we will find more interesting topics in the fields of academic study of China to discuss in the future. But for now, I would like to thank you for joining the conversations on Sinology, and to wish you a beautiful day. Thank you, Goran.
Thank you, Jelena, for this invitation. I really enjoy speak with you, and hopefully it will be time to share some other thoughts, and I'm looking forward to listen and watch some other your podcasts. Good luck.
Thank you, Goran. Goodbye.